the Hodge bundles and their properties. So I haven't mentioned it yesterday because that was not really necessary, but in the Hodge decomposition, so of the cohomology of X, which is a compact scalar. So I wrote this in the form that hk of x with a complex coefficient is the direct sum of hpq of x. And I had defined the hpqs as the set of cohomology classes representable by the closed form of type pq. But in fact, it turns out that this is part of the Hodge decomposition theorem correctly formulated. The hpq of x is isomorphic to hq of x, omega x to the p, where here you have the bundle of holomorphic p forms. And that follows from in fact, from the proof of the Hodge decomposition theorem, which passes through the use of harmonic forms and the fact that the Laplacian for D equals the Laplacian for the operator the delta bar. So there is an extra information here. And from this, now if you consider the Hodge decomposition formulated with this extra information, you get as a consequence that the Fröhlicher spectral sequence of x degenerates. So x is a compact scalar. Degenerates at E1. So the Fröhlicher spectral sequence, you consider the holomorphic de Rham complex. So it's 0, Ox goes to omega x, so you consider only holomorphic functions and holomorphic forms, etc. This is, by the holomorphic Poincaré lemma, a resolution of the constant sheaf on X. And so the hypercohomology of the holomorphic de Rham complex is the same as the cohomology of X with value in the. So this is a resolution. And so that means that this complex cohomology here can be computed as a hypercohomology of the holomorphic de Rham complex. Now on this complex you have the Hodge filtration, which is just the filtration by the truncation. So fp omega x dot, that will be the complex where you start from a degree p. Okay, so this gives you a filtration of your holomorphic de Rham complex. And the Fröhlicher spectral sequence is the spectral sequence of a hypercohomology associated with this filtration. And its the first term, A1PQ, is HQ of x omega xp. And the fact that you have the Hodge decomposition here is that gives you the equality that the Betti number, the dimension of hk is the sum of the hpqs. That shows you that the hpqs here being the dimension of the A1pq terms here, that gives you the degenerate. At A1. So what I want to take out of this, which is of course very well known, is a wonderful property of the Hodge bundles, So suppose now that I have a family of compact Kähler manifolds. Which means that phi is a smooth, proper holomorphic map. And just ask that the fibers are Kähler. Then define the so you define the HPQ, which are a priori coherent shifts on the base, as R P phi lower star omega x over B, sorry, it's Q. So P, so this is the relative cotangent bundle. Okay, so and the property I was alluding to is this. The HPQ bundle is locally free and satisfies base change. That is, well, that means that it's fibers, well, if I think in terms of just the point, the base change to a point, the fibers of this coherent sheaf, HPQ at a point T, it's exactly the cohomology of this HPQ of the fiber XT. So this is the base change property, just formulated for one point. So why this? Well, in fact, this property, as I am going to explain immediately, is very interesting to state, even when B is something singular, and in particular when it is, for example, an Artinian scheme, because there are important applications to deformation theory. So, but in that case, to prove the base change property, you have to do it in a formal way. But basically, so let's forget about the schematic problem. But essentially, this follows from the fact that Bk is sigma of HPQ, and this number here, it's so that is true for all fibers. This number is constant because it is a topological invariant. And these numbers, they are upper semi-continuous, which means concretely that when you specialize at one point, the dimension of cohomology can only jump, can get only higher. So now you have a sum of numbers which are upper semi-continuous in T, and the sum is a constant. So all of them are constant. Now, of course, here that does not prove really the full contents of this, but that's the main idea. After that, if you really want to prove this, essentially what you will have to do is to consider, well, in this situation, x over b, you will consider the local relative holomorphic de Ramo complex and consider R k pi lower star of this thing and use the relative version of all that I explained before and conclude that this is locally free. And then use the spectral sequence argument on this relative holomorphic de Ramo complex. So the formal proof to get this is of course more involved, but the idea is here. So why do I insist on these facts, which are extremely classical in Hodge theory? That I want to show you that how this implies, in rather formal way, the so-called Bogomolov, no so-called Bogomolov-Tian-Todorov theorem. So application. No, sorry, Tian-Todorov theorem. As I said, the proof given by Tian, it's. I don't think it's at the end very different from the one that I am going to give. Simply the one that I will describe is more formal and conceptual. Tian does it more in a more computational way. So what does it say? Let X be compact Kähler manifold with a trivial canonical bundle. Okay, so it's stronger than the properties that I have been considering yesterday, namely the C1 of Kx is 0. Here I actually want the canonical to be trivial. And then the deformation theory of X is unobstructed. There is a remark to make, which is the fact that if I use the Yao theorem, I don't need. So for a hyperkähler manifold, that result could be also obtained by the Yao theorem plus the existence of twistor lines that I described yesterday. But this Yao theorem is extremely hard, and I don't want to use it. I want to show you a proof which uses only Hodge theory, which is much easier from the viewpoint of analysis. So, first of all, the meaning of the theorem. So maybe I say it quickly. So what is deformation theory? Well, there are two ways of doing. The Kuranishi, viewpoint of Kuranishi, this is the one that I explained yesterday. To deform the complex structure, you deform the almost complex structure, keeping the, of course, you have to keep the integrability condition satisfied, so you have, it gives you the local equation. It has a very big defect, is that it is not actually going to describe you the deformation of the complex structures, but in order to get the deformation of the isomorphism class of the complex structure, you have not only to solve this equation, but then take the quotient of the result by an enormous group, which is a group of diffeomorphisms, of your variety. So it's really an infinite dimensional viewpoint, which is not very pleasant. The other viewpoint is a functorial viewpoint where you speak about the deformation functor. So that is, you have your X, and you are going to study all the families like this. B will be, so you have a point, B will be a pointed analytic space, for example. And so this is a smooth holomorphic map. And you want the fiber 0 to be isomorphic to your original X. So that gives you a functor on what this is here that you can put here the pointed analytic spaces, germs, or you can do the theory on Artinian schemes if it's only the formal viewpoint that you are interested in. So this viewpoint is very pleasant because it works inside algebraic geometry. In particular, if you do the finite order theory, you start from an X which is algebraic. All the data at finite order, they will be completely algebraic. So it's a nice situation. But in fact, the big problem with that is that we absolutely do not have a representation result which would say that this functor is represented by something, in the sense that what we are describing here are exactly the morphism from the B to some space, which is called. And it turns out that the Kuran-Yeshi method provides this universal family, which here this has to be taken as a germ. And Kuran-Yeshi tells you that this exists, assuming, for example, only that the central fiber has a discrete automorphism group, if you like, H0 of xTx is equal to 0. And assuming this, we have this universal family, which has the property that, this represents the deformation functor. Represent in which sense? As I said, this functor is very algebraic. Inside, you can really formulate it in algebraic geometry if you put here Artinian schemes. And what you get here is something which is very analytic, which is not surprising because, as I explained, there are many deformations of algebraic varieties which are not algebraic at all. These deformations, you see them at finite order. And so they exist here, but they do not really, cannot be integrated in the algebraic geometry world. So you recover them here. So I take for granted the existence of this universal family, and the functorial viewpoint. It's excellent to describe the finite order deformation theory. And so the meaning of this theorem here is that this B univ is smooth at 0, or equivalently any first order deformation of X can be extended to infinitely higher order. So first order deformation, it's the deformation like this. It's, here it's analytic scheme with a central fiber our X, and here we want this map to be flat, which is the same as a smooth. Okay. And this is the spec of C of epsilon over epsilon square. And so what the theorem is saying that if you have any such first order deformation, then there exists for our arbitrarily large n an xn over say delta n, which is the spec of C of epsilon over epsilon to the n plus 1, extending the given first order deformation. Of course, the flatness here is essential, otherwise you say nothing. Okay. Now, let me explain why in the Calabi-Yau case that extension property follows from this base change property for the Hodge bundles. So you have the Kodaira-Spencer map, which to a first order deformation like this associate an element u in h1 of x tx. So this u is obtained as follows. So you consider so this is a Kodaira-Spencer class. You consider Tx epsilon, so it's not very good as a coherent sheaf. It's something over x epsilon. Here, so it's a scheme with a nilpotent. But if you restrict this to x, you get a rank 2 vector, locally free vector bundle of rank the dimension of x plus 1, which so this is defined as omega x epsilon to the x dual. Okay. And so this is locally free. And you have an exact, the normal bundle exact sequence. Here this is the tangent bundle to the fibre over 0. And here you have the normal bundle, which is of course the trivial. And the Kodaira-Spencer class is the extension class here of this extension. And now this construction can be done when you have a nth order deformation. If you have an xn over delta n, the deformation to nth order, so you would like to show that it extends to next order. Okay? So now you have the relative Kodaira-Spencer class. You do exactly the same thing, namely you have an object which is here, which is Txn restricted to x minus 1. This object is, again, is defined as the dual of omega xn restricted to xn minus 1. So omega xn is not good, it's not locally free, but when you restrict it to the xn minus 1, it's locally free. Okay, and this one, it contains the relative. This is the exact analog of this exact sequence here, and the quotient is Ox n minus 1. And the extension class gives the relative Kodaira-Spencer class, En, which is in H1 of xn minus 1. And here I have the relative okay, and now comes the point that I consider as essential and which has been established much later than the original Bogomolov-Tian-Todorov theorem. This is the T1 lifting principle. Yes, one has to say that given this family here, we also have the relative tangent bundle, which is locally free and which extends already to order n this locally free sheaf. And the T1 lifting principle says the following theorem. So I think that it's fair to attribute it to Rahn. Maybe Rahn has a more general version of this. Extending my nth order deformation of x to n plus 1 order is equivalent to extending the class En so this class is in T xn minus 1 over delta n minus 1 to a class En plus 1 in H1 of Txn over delta n. So it's a sort of linearization of the problem, but you are already at nth order, so it's not so obvious to see that in fact still this linearization given by the Kodaira-Spencer class is enough. So of course I am not going to prove this, but now it will be quite easy to conclude out of this the proof of the Bogomolov-Tian-Todorov theorem. So as I said, so my X is a trivial canonical bundle, and it is a compact Keller. So what I want to, so I give me nth order deformation like this, and I want to show that that it extends to next order. Now the point is that H0 of Kx is so it's one-dimensional. I have a class here. So this is, we are in the HD0. So let's D be the dimension of X. We have this HD0 bundle, which is exactly the pi lower star of the relative canonical bundle, or the top degree, exterior power of the relative cotangent bundle. And this one, by Hodge theory, is locally free. So it follows that I have eta n, which is a section, which is, of course, here the canonical bundle is trivial, so the section that I have, sigma is nowhere 0. Because the edge D0 bundle is locally free, this section eta extends to section eta n in edge 0 of omega x n over delta n to the d. And this class, this section is nowhere 0. That gives a trivialization of this bundle. Okay. And now the point is that this by interior product, because this top exterior power section is nowhere 0, I get an isomorphism between Txn over delta n and so I take the entire product with this sorry, it was a sigma, so it's a sigma n. By taking the interior product with this of a tangent vector field against this homomorphic form, or relative homomorphic form, I get that this is isomorphic to this sheaf. And now this is finished because the h1 of omega xn over delta n, this is a Hodge bundle that satisfies the...
You think B minus 1, I guess?
Yes, thank you. That satisfies the base change property. Because it's a Hodge bundle. So the class, the relative Kodaira-Spencer class I have here, we are in an minus 1, sorry, an, so it's in h1 of xn minus 1 t xn minus 1 over delta n minus 1. This is the same as h1 of xn minus 1 with values in the omega to the d minus 1. And this one, by base change property for these bundles, it comes from something in h1 of xn, omega xn to the d minus 1, which is isomorphic to... Okay, and this way I extend my relative Kodaira-Spencer class, and I am able to apply this criterion. Okay, so that was the first thing that I wanted to show you, because it's very interesting that shows that in some cases, well, of course here I need the K-triviality assumption, you can use Hodge theory for, you can apply it to delicate results in deformation theory. Okay, so now the next thing that I want to do is, of course, the study of the period map, which is an essential tool to understand the moduli theory for hyperkähler manifolds. So now the situation is that again I will consider a smooth, say, holomorphic map, and I need that smooth proper holomorphic map, and the fibers are Kähler. Then so you can define, so assume that, well, maybe do I need this? No, assume B is simply connected. Connected and simply connected. So your family is trivial topologically, and all fibers HK, well, with any coefficients, will be isomorphic to the central, the diffeomorphic. So, no, the cohomology is isomorphic because all fibers are diffeomorphic. And so now what does the period map? So define Fp Hk of XTC to be the sum of the spaces HRS bearing the Hodge decomposition. So R plus S should be K. Okay. And so this is a complex subspace of Hk of XTC. But using this isomorphism here, I see this as a constant vector space. And as I explained, under this assumption, these spaces have a constant dimension. So in fact, this space has a constant dimension. And what does the period map? So maybe call this dimension BPK. So Griffith's period map takes value in the Grassmannian of complex subspaces of dimension BPK inside this given space here. And to T, it associates this subspace. And the main theorem of Griffith says three things. That first of all, P is holomorphic. Second, it satisfies the Griffith transversality property. That says that when you take the first order deformations of the space FPHK, you arrive in FP minus 1. Okay. And the last one, well, it's the formula for essentially for this map. This map, which measures the way your space FPHK deforms inside the given space here. And more precisely, by transversality. Well, so take a tangent vector at 0 or at any point. Then the differential of your period map will be something which. So this is an element in the tangent space to this Grassmannian here. So it's something which is in home FPHK HK over FPHK. Okay, so I should put a 0 everywhere. But by Griffith, we arrive in a space which is much smaller, namely home. You take well, over Fp plus 1, you get to 0 by transversality, and finally it factors like this, HPQ of x0. And here, again, by transversality, I arrive in fp minus 1 over fp, which is hp minus 1 q plus 1 of x0. And the point 3 in Griffiths is as follows. That this dp of u here is given by contraction associated to rho of u. So rho of u, so it's a Kodaira-Spencer class of the first order deformation given by u. Okay. And then once you have this element in h1 tx0, you see how you can contract it with hq omega xp to arrive in. So it's an interior product on the tangent vector, and here it's a cup product in cohomology. Well, of course, I am not going to prove this result. I think the best formal proof is just by using the representation again. So you use the relative holomorphic de Rham complex, and it has the Hodge filtration by well, which proves immediately that the P is holomorphic, and in this setting, if you represent the Gauss-Manin connection using the Katz-Oda method, you get very easily the Griffiths transversality. Okay, so what it is now going to do in the hyperkähler setting? So now X is a hyperkähler. That means that it is compact Kähler with trivial canonical bundle. So everything that I said before applies. But also I have this sigma X in H20 of X, which is everywhere. So it's a holomorphic to form, which is everywhere non-degenerate. And then we get as an immediate, so the period map for deformations of, so I take a ball in the deformation universal deformation of my X. I get my period map for holomorphic two forms. And the result is as follows. I think it's essentially due to Beauville, maybe also Bogomolov and Fujiki, but I'm not completely sure. And it says the following. This period map here is an immersion onto hypersurface. A priori, it's an analytic hypersurface, D, and D is defined by a quadric, so a quadratic equation. Q, which is called the Beauville-Bogomolov quadratic form, and 3. This quadratic equation, this quadratic form, has a topological description. Of Q, namely, I can arrange that this Q, so it's a quadratic form on which is already with rational coefficient. Okay. Multiplying it, I can even assume that it is with the integral coefficient. And then you can essentially normalize it uniquely. And there exists a lambda, which is a universal coefficient of this x, such that for any class alpha in H2 of x q, q of alpha, so my x dimension of x is 2d. Q of alpha to the d is the integral over x of alpha to the 2d. Sorry, there is a lambda here. Okay. And as I said, this this will determine uniquely the lambda if I ask that my q is integral and it cannot be divided anymore, plus some sign condition. Okay, so that gives you one. Okay. So let me explain quickly how this follows from these formal properties. And yes, maybe I should also say add one property of this Bovil-Bogomolov form, which is 4. The space H20 plus H11 of x is the orthogonal complement of H20 of x with respect to Q. Okay. For 1, it's immediate because we know this is a computation by Griffiths of the derivative of the period map. dp of u, that will be something which is in home H20. So this is H2 of x over H20. And we know that my u is in H1 of x dx. And this map is given by, so this space is one-dimensional generated by sigma. And it is, so in fact this is this space that I'm considering. And it is given by u maps to the entire product of sigma by u. But sigma, it's H0 omega x squared. It is very well non-degenerate. So it gives an isomorphism of vector bundles by like this. When you pass this isomorphism, you pass to cohomology, giving this isomorphism, and you conclude that your map, which is here, is injective. So that shows for you that so your P is an immersion. Also, you know very well what is the image. The image is this space H1 omega x inside the H2 of x. Okay, and this is a hyperplane. And so you conclude that the image must be a hypersurface. Okay. And now, what is this hypersurface? Now I prove to you at the same time the 3, and maybe also the 4. The point is as follows. So this hypersurface, by definition, it's the set of classes which are of type 2,0 for some deformation of your x. So the point is that if you take a sigma t in this image, that means that it is in a generator of H20 of xt for some deformation of x. And but these classes, they always satisfy the property that sigma to the d plus 1 is 0, because they are of type 2,0 and my varieties of dimension 2d. So certainly, if I consider f of alpha to be the integral over x of alpha to the 2d, because of course my d is at least 1, I find that this homogeneous form vanishes on the image of the period map, so on D. But this homogeneous form, it is not zero by, for example, the Lefschetz theorem, which says that it is non-zero on a Kähler class. So the conclusion is that I found this equation which vanishes on the image. Now the point is, I am almost done. I want to explain the presence of this quadric, but that follows also immediately from what I have here, because you see, I do not have only this vanishing of alpha to the 2d. I have this vanishing that alpha to the d plus 1 is 0. And that implies that a stronger property that f vanishes to order d along the image of the period map. And now this is finished because here I have a homogeneous form of degree 2d. I know that it vanishes at order d along a hypersurface, so this hypersurface has to be defined by a quadric, and that provides the quadric Q. And finally, the last property that is here is just the fact that the tangent space to a quadric at each point, this is the orthogonal of the given point. On the other hand, this has to be by deformation, by Griffiths transversality, that has to be the H1. Okay, so I stop. I should stop, I think.